Okay, for this lab, we want to edit audio and put it into the Unity scene for the later lab. So what we can do is we can get sounds from a site called Freesound, and this does require a login. I've already logged in, and let's say we wanted to collect some assets. So a dog bark, we can search, and you can see that there are varying lengths. You know, for just an audio clip that we're going to click on a button and have it play. You know, we don't want something very long. So you can see, you know, some of these go on for a while. But, you know, we might want to just edit one of them. So this one. So you can hear that one maybe a little bit too long. Some of these are very short. Some of them have 2 barks in them. So for this one, perhaps, you know, we'll take a look at the 2 barks and then we'll cut it down to 1. And when you click on it, you see the you know, larger rendition of that sound. And then you basically, all you have to do is click on the download button, and then you could show it in folder. And I have it right here. I'm just going to copy it and then put it into a folder I created on my desktop called Audio Assets. And, you know, perhaps we could just call it Dog Bark now, just so that we can have a shorter name. And then, you know, go into Freesound again, and we want some kind of an ambient sound for a background. So we could say ambient street scene, you know, so let's see. Sounds like that one might work for us, you know, so we could bring that one in, this one in particular, and then download that. And again, you know, I'm going to download one more. So we want like a fire engine, siren. So we want to do some kind of a, it's a long approach. Maybe we don't want it so long. This one. Or this one. That one should be adequate. So let's just download that one. And now we can look at them in, well, look at them in the folder. And you can see, you know, I try not to keep too many things in my downloads folder. I move them out of there into a different folder, but this, let's just call it Street Sounds, and then we'll call this one just fire engine. So okay, so you see I'm using, you know, kind of a camel casing in the way that I name things. So I'm going to copy that, and then I'll, you know, get rid of them from the downloads folder, but I want to copy them into my audio assets folder because this will be where I draw from when I create the Unity scene. So in terms of how we want to build that scene, you know, we could basically start up Unity for the audio, and you know, I have Unity starting up here, and we could create a new Unity project. Now, you know, when you create a new Unity project, we're going to be using 2D, so just select 2D there, and you can see it's going to go to my desktop. But I want to call this street scene. So I'm going to create the project, and then it will open up in a moment. So right now the street scene project is on my desktop. I'm just going to put it here because I have a dual screen here, and I want to make sure you see that. So you can see the street scene folder is being created, and it's got a number of subfolders within it. In particular, the one that you'll see often if you open up this folder is the assets folder, and this is where you put assets, or I should say Unity puts the assets when you drag and drop or import them. So I would recommend that you don't modify anything in the actual project folder unless you have to. And there's ways that you can just drag things into the folder itself, but when we're in Unity, you'll see that if I want to import new assets, I could just go to the the main folder, the desktop folder, and you can see I've got lots of things in there, but the one I want is the audio assets. So you see these three I can import into the project as is. Okay. And with Unity, if you just drag the audio that you want to play for any particular scene into that scene and play it, with nothing in the scene yet. So this is really just the start of how we would use audio in a project, aside from all the other assets that we need to put into the project. But for now, I'm just going to close out of this, and always hit save, because it's very picky about scenes having to be saved often, and whenever you switch to a different scene. So the program that I wanted to show you and have you use is called Audacity, and basically this program allows you to edit audio, create audio. So we're going to open up one of the audio files that I have under the desktop, and it's under audio assets. So let's say we wanted to open up the dog bark. You see it looks just like it did in Freesound, and you could basically play that. But if you just like that first bark, it sounds like there's a person in the background too, but you could do things like, if I wanted to just have it with less of a interval, I could just drag between the two and then hit the delete key, and now you'll see it'll just bark in succession. But what we really want is just a single bark. So all we have to do is get rid of the second part, and even if in the beginning we want it just to immediately start, we could highlight that opening part too, and then we'll just have the bark, and you can clean it up a little. So this is to audio editing what Gimp is to image editing, and both are open source software. So there's something that we're going to use quite often in the course is open source software and open sources for our assets, in fact, like Freesound. So once you've found that that's the audio clip that you want, then you could export it. So we're going to export that audio into a folder that on my desktop, audio assets. So I just want to have them in there. So you can call it something different. Maybe just call it dog bark 1, and then you specify what type of file to go to. So MP3 is the compressed audio that we're typically going to use. There's several other file formats that you could use, but we're going to just save it in this format. And then you get this secondary kind of metadata tags information that you could populate if you want, or you could just take the default and hit OK. So now I've got in my audio assets folder, you see it's got dog bark 1, so it's got an additional dog bark audio. We also want to get maybe a background image, and so you could use Google Images. You could just go to Google, but if you click on the images once you've searched, so we're going to search for dog, and then make sure it's a PNG image, and that when you get that search, you can go to images and then peruse the images, or you can change this tools menu and go to color transparent to ensure that it's transparent. So if we wanted to just incorporate this one, it looks like download dog free PNG. So now that one does not have a background, transparent background, so we'll still use it. So I'm going to save it, save image as. I guess I'll use the same folder I have in my downloads folder. I'm sorry, my desktop folder called audio assets. So we're going to call that dog. Okay, this one actually does have a transparent background, but you need to test that. This checkerboard shows oftentimes, on a Google image or any image you see it on Google, and it might appear that indicates that it's transparent, but sometimes you'll see a checkerboard pattern. It might be bigger blocks, and then you bring it into the project, and it's not a transparent background. So, ultimately, when you bring it in to Unity, then you'll be able to tell. So, again, I'm going to go into Unity, and I have that project already created. So you can see my workflow for Unity is basically, if I want to stay in there, I stay in there. But if I'm done editing, then I just close out Unity, and then I restart it, just so that everything is cleanly loaded, and I know what I'm starting with. So here we can import the dog. So now we have the dog itself, and then you can see, okay, so that doesn't have a transparent background. So that's what I was afraid of when I first saw that. So what you want to do instead is, if you really like that image, you could edit that with a program called Gimp. So in order to edit that with Gimp, we would just launch it. You have to install it. It's a free open source software. But once you launch it, you could open up the file that we just had. So I'm going to say file open, and then I want to go to my desktop, and then audio assets is the folder that I'm using, and you can see that did download as JPEG. So I should have noticed that at the time, because the JPEG does not have the transparent background. So in order to make this a graphic with a transparent background, you could zoom in and out with that by holding the Control key and your mouse wheel. It's very simple. All you have to do is go Layer, Transparency, Add Alpha Channel, and then go to your Tools menu, and you want to select the area of the background, but by selecting it as a rectangle or an ellipse, it's going to be very hard to get every little curve. So fuzzy select is kind of the best one for this kind of situation. So you select fuzzy select, and then you select anywhere in the white area behind that image, and then you press the delete key, and now you'll see the checkerboard background. And since that image is already it's already saved as a JPEG, I want to save make a copy of it, but not as a JPEG. And there's a couple of ways you can change the file type. You can go down here and select file type by extension, or you could just change the extension to .png. So portable network graphic is what we want to save it to. So we then export, and then it should go to the same folder that you've been using. You can take the defaults for now. So we're going to export all of that, and then if you minimize this and look in the audio assets, you'll see two versions of dog. If you hover over it, you'll see this one is the ping and this one is the JPEG. So if I go back into Unity, I don't want this one anymore, so I'm just going to delete it from the assets folder, and then I want to import a new asset, and make sure that when you hover over it, it's the right one, dog.png, and then when you drag it into the scene, you could see that it's in a transparent background. So if we play this, you'll see image on the background, but we could locate an image for the background, a street scene, and put that in there. But for now, I just want to show you how to do this. We'll just keep it with a blue background. So in order to have that as a button, just by dragging it in there isn't the right way to do it. We have to create a button first. So I'm going to delete it out of the scene, and I want to create a what's called a empty game object, and I'm going to call it well, this is for scene. Well, that's something we'll do later. Rather, I wanted to create a UI element called a button. And notice that when you create the button, there's a canvas that gets created along with it. Okay, so these are, the button is kind of a child of the canvas. So if you want to configure that button, you have to keep in mind that its parent is the canvas. Now, since it's going to be a dog that we're going to click on and it's going to bark, we don't want to have text on that button, so we can just delete that text. And then there's something that we have to do for the canvas. Every time you create a canvas, whether it's something with a button or with text, you have to set it up over here where you have screen space overlay, change it to screen space camera, and then drag the main camera over to where it says render camera. And by the way, you want to make the order and layer something larger than 0. So I usually start out with 10. So that's basically 0 is the background, and the numbers increase as they come closer to you. And then the other thing we should change is this UI scale mode to scale with screen size. So now we have the button showing here. So when we click on the button, you'll see it's basically just a blank button. But if we drag the dog to where it says UI sprite here, we'll see that now the button is a dog. And what you can do is when you play this, of course, you just see the dog. It's actually showing that it's a button, Um,